That's brilliant. Okay, so we're gonna learn and grow together and unify movements and share. This is just a space for common unity to come together and do what's required. So thank you for what you're doing, and I'm gonna just hit the live over there on Facebook, and then I'm going to share it out to a few different places. We are officially live streaming over on Facebook, and I am so excited today to be with some incredible powerhouse women to my west, where we have a serious situation that is not being talked about in the mainstream because it's poisoned. Keep drinking from it, expecting it to change, except for we're the ones that have to demand for that to happen. And these women are actually doing that. So I wanted to open the floor today, Laura J. with Peaceful Inner Warriors United, to say that these ladies are doing very important work for us all, protecting sacred land. And so I'm going to give each of them an opportunity to share where they're coming from and who they are, and be able to simply let the world know what's happening in BC, because it's very relevant for all of us.
Thanks, Laura. Wow, what a nice introduction. And I'm honored to be sitting here with these total powerhouse women. I am a grandma, and I went up to Fairy Creek blockades quite a few months ago, and I took part. I jumped right in. Boy, everybody was so welcoming. It felt like being home. I did dishes, I cooked, I organized Lost and Found, because it's so organized up there. Actually, there was everything that anyone needed to support the frontline peaceful land protectors, and it was an amazing experience, and I just kept going back and back. And I've been out bushwhacking with Royanne, who's on here as well, who is a scientist looking for birds and all kinds of things in the sacred woods. I've been to prayer circles. I've done a lot. I've been up to the ridge, which was an amazing trip for me, and along the way I've met these beautiful women, and I just thought, you know, they need a platform to be able to talk about what's really going on, because I don't see it on the news. I don't see what's really going on. And the RCMP are assaulting my friends. I've met lots of beautiful young men and women, and, you know, bruises and broken bones and tears and tear gas. And it's just pepper spray. I mean, it's horrible. So let's talk about that. Thank you, Laura.
Absolutely. Thank you. Is there, I know that there were some court cases that were happening at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time this morning connected to this and advocating for the stopping of the trespasses that are happening on the lands and the people that are standing in there. So if someone could speak into that before, I'm not sure if one of you are one of those people with the court appearance, but information on that would be very important, please.
Kathy, would you like to speak on the court cases this morning and how Teal's lawyer was able to speak all day yesterday, but today we have various cases against Teal, and each legal team is allotted to 2 hours each. So Teal gets to waffle for 6 hours. And for our tens of thousands of dollars, I can't tell you the hours of time into getting ready for court. Our lawyers are only allowed in teams between all of them 6 or 6.5 hours. It's absolutely insane, and it's completely stacked against civil society and the environment. You know, Kathy, could you talk a little bit about the different legal cases that'll be coming up today?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Can you explain to the audience what Teal is?
Yes,
I think
sure.
Quick overview.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, Teal Jones is the industrial logging company, a forestry company that has an injunction against the Rainforest Flying Squad and persons unknown, i.e. everybody who is taking part in defending the old growth forests. Up to now, that's thousands of people who have been on the ground. It's tens of thousands of people around the province and the country and the world who have supported us with donations and items and messages of encouragement and phone calls and letters and anything that they can do to pressure the NDP government into making the right decision about the old growth forests that of 2.7% of which are left standing. It's a precious resource, and people are willing to put their bodies and their money and their talents on the line for this. So Teal Jones, their injunction, the original 6-month injunction ends September 26th of this month. They are seeking a 1-year extension. Normally, injunctive remedies are considered to be a short-term type of legal maneuver to get somebody to, stop whatever they're doing. Obviously, we're not going to stop it, and even if they do win a 1-year extension to the injunction, I think everybody, including the justice, is aware that we will still be a mighty presence in whatever form that takes for the coming year. So we're not about to stop, and I think the justice is kind of worried about how this reflects on the reputation of the court, and especially how the RCMP actions reflect on the reputation of the court. The RCMP are deliberately ignoring the instructions of this particular Justice Thompson, who has said that exclusion zones are illegal, that they are not allowed to deny access to the media. Both of which and more the RCMP have still engaged in, regardless of Justice Thompson's decision. So this morning, we have 3 legal teams in who will be opposing Teal Jones. The first legal team is trying what's called a novel approach. There's no case precedent for it, and they will be injecting the public interest argument into the court, saying that the old growth forest deserves the protection of the government because it does so much in terms of Indigenous rights and title, biodiversity, climate change, all those things that we now know that forests provide us. The second team is opposing the actual extension of the injunction to Teal Jones, citing the clean hands doctrine, saying that neither Teal Jones nor the RCMP deserve an extension in view of the behavior that they have exhibited over the last, going on 5 months now, where they have stolen our possessions, where they have pepper sprayed us, where they have, sorry about that, where they have broken people's bones, given them concussions, bruises, targeted Indigenous peoples, towed our cars off of public roads and charged us $2,500 to get them back. There's all sorts of egregious behaviors that have been exhibited that, if somebody is seeking the protection of the court, and they are themselves breaking the court and the direct words of the justice, then they don't deserve the protection of the court. Then the third lawyer is going to be presenting evidence as to charging the RCMP basically with contempt of court. So those are the three basic actions going forward today, all of which will be squished into, I believe, a total of 7 hours. There's another half hour added on tomorrow morning. So we had anticipated having much more time to present. But on the other hand, the evidence that we do have is so damning. We have the videos, we have the firsthand witness statements, we have the photos, we have it all, and we have it all in spades. So if I don't see how the justice can ignore that. I didn't think that Teal Jones' argument was particularly strong yesterday. They ignored much of the evidence. Although they did attribute us with, they demonstrated to the judge, I thought quite nicely, how beautifully we sing and how creative we are and how skilled we are in evolving our tripod design skills. So I thought that he really did, a wonderful job for us on that part. So, but But obviously, I don't know that the justice can take that into legal consideration. But we believe that we have a good shot then of squashing this injunction. So that's our intent for today.
Wonderful. And then the injunction, that would stop it for the next year?
Not necessarily, because apparently Teal Jones can just go back into the court and apply for a brand new injunction. But this all takes time. And so anything we can do to push the date along into the winter months to the point where they can't harvest anymore, they can't clear cut anymore, that's all to our good. But yeah, they apparently can go right in and ask for another injunction, which makes no sense at all legally. So I'll be interested to see how that actually works.
Has any man or woman made a land claim or a claim for the land? As a man?
Well, the land actually belongs already to the Pachadat people. It's unceded territory. It actually belongs to them. And this is where the conundrum is, because government treats it like Crown land. And therefore they feel they have a right to lease it to Teal Jones for 25 years so that they can clear cut it and make off with all the profits. Well, this is a completely ignorant model, to say the least, because the Crown does not own the land. The Pachadat own the land, but the Pachadat are divided. This is why government is supporting an elected council of 2 versus, true consultation with the Pachadat people who don't know anything of what's going on and what their council have signed on their behalf. It's totally egregious. Yet the government pretends, like this is their land to do with as they will. And they don't have that right. So it's the Pachadat people who have to become strong enough to say, this is our land, get lost, basically.
We have a de facto government, which means we inherited a government that's corrupted, that's no longer a de jure government, that's actually designed for the people, by the people, of the people. So there's a huge shift that needs to happen, in that people need to understand that we're being placed into public positions to sign on behalf of the corpse, to then do the corpse's dirty bidings, and then the soul actually accrues the karma that is being worked up on behalf of the corporation in terms of taking out all of these trees in the forest and the ecosystem and all of the life. I really feel like it's important to bring in a spiritual side to the conversation, because there is a karmic element to this, that the men and women that come in as loggers are accruing personal karma for their choice to participate in this. The politicians and the government people and everybody else that is involved in this are actually taking on that karmic debt. And I know that our BS or belief systems may differ in the foundation of where we may think that we're coming from in all of this. But I just want to frame that from the perspective to say that it is so much bigger, because part of what piqued my interest yesterday when I was informed of what is going on that you are dealing with is about the mother and father trees in this ancient forest being targeted. And right now we've got the same situation in the elder concentration camps, that we pay a lot of money to keep our elders in so that we're separate from their information. And they're easier to get rid of because there's a lot going on that's very akin to what's going on in the forest. And if we could bring in that perspective too, so people really see the symbolic overlaying of what you're dealing with literally and what we're all going through in a more spiritual or a more metaphysical kind of way, or in a different perspective, I think that that would be a really useful contribution of perspective that may not be talked about elsewhere as readily.
I tell you what, just because Kathy and I have to go soon to be online for court, I won't be able to bring in that perspective. But when it comes to the people who are doing the falling, it's a drug to them. It's a rush. It's a complete state of ecstasy to actually destroy one of these massive trees. We're watching how closely the police and industry work together. It's the same mentality. I've had numerous police tell me that climate change basically is my opinion. And on it goes. The ignorance and arrogance is unbelievable. And not to mention pensions of all government employees, including our police, is based on resource extraction. So they have a vested interest in all this. And they really are, some of the highest paid of our public service. And, a third of our city budgets, at least, go into policing. It's insane, instead of into services that the money needs to go into. Just want to very quickly add too that we're probably down to less than or about 2% of our original productive old growth forest. We've got so little. And because we have a government that's incredibly duplicitous, people think the NDP, New Democratic Party, is the party for the people. But historically, they've been one of the most two-faced, and they have created a complete propaganda campaign to fool people into thinking that they're actually protecting ancient old growth when they've actually increased licensing to log it. And right now, these companies are taking everything down as fast as they can because they know they're at the end game. They're at the end game statistically, and they're at the end game politically because people are waking up and they're upset. It was actually the NDP that reigned during the days of Claycott. And people thought after the mid 1990s that old growth was being protected because we had so little then. But back then we had about 30% of it. So now we're down to the last 2%. And we have a government that has basically constantly lies to the public, comes up with all sorts of talk and log programs, and has deliberately orchestrated it so the companies get what they want before they clear out. We subsidize this industry not only $1 million a day just for the difference between the cost to run the Ministry of Forests and industry. Like the public pays that because we're getting we get GDP, but that's corporate profit. When it comes to government revenue, that's in the hole. And then if you look at the cost of carbon, oil and gas in BC alone, if you were to look at taxing this industry, the carbon expense that goes into the air every year because of cutting these forests, then it would be minimum 2 billion, on average 4 billion a year just in BC taxes alone, and often 6 billion a year in taxes. So it's an industry that's costing us financially. And I could go on and on about now we have to have water treatment plants because we've lost the best water filtration system on the planet. Thousands of species at risk. We are losing all sorts of species. The area that's being logged right now, the minister turned around and changed the rules to protect an area and just arbitrarily. This industry has so much power. The corporations aren't required to do all sorts of assessments and analysis. Even oil and gas has to go to a little effort that way. When it comes to forests, no. BC is now basically one large tree plantation, and that's why we have so many forest fires. We have lost the canopy that kept the province well regulated, cool, and kept forest fires under control. So we are now experiencing, i.e. Lytton, burned and sit down in 6 minutes. Incredible forest fires, they're getting worse and worse. Humidity is in the air now instead of in the ground. That is scary. There's so many consequences of what has happened. And my last line here is government and industry is colluding to basically eliminate history, because these huge old stumps are eroding very quickly right now. And what people don't realize is that all this steep hillside, which is where industry is now because they've logged the valley bottoms, it's eroding quickly, and it's changing our climate quickly. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for that wealth of information and the passion and the conviction that you've had to actually go through everything you've done to be able to know what you do. Before the next part of your trial today, I wonder if there's anything that you wanted to say, and if anyone else, Royanne, I'm not sure if you are able to stay a little longer and then we can get your perspective after, so that Kathy and Carol have an opportunity to.
Yeah. I would just like to say that Fairy Creek is now the largest civil disobedience movement in Canadian history. And it's because people care. People care very much about what happens to their environment. It's like we've been asleep for so long. We've been trusting in government and corporations to look after our wealth and the First Nations, and they have not done so. And now we are just, it's like waking up in this horrible dream now to the reality that everything has been destroyed and polluted and taken for profit. And people are no longer willing to put up with this model. There's so much that has to change. We thought we were going into this just to save the old growth forests. Well, now we've revealed a whole ball of wax that it's much more than that. It's Indigenous rights and title and sovereignty. It's climate change, it's biodiversity, it's social and economic justice. It's the whole collusion between government and Teal Jones and the RCMP, right? And then a court system that is geared to protecting corporate interests, not to protecting the public interest. The public interest has to become the focus of our government, of our police, of our courts. And corporations have to be held at bay simply because their greed model is far too much for us to bear. I'm not sure that we're in time to change this. I have a feeling that we're not, but we will have to do the best we can regardless.
Absolutely. We have to salvage what we've got left, Carol.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, when you look at these injunctions, which again, as Kathy said, is an extraordinary remedy, now that is just the standard way to deal with things. So we have a government, i.e. again, the BC government is going to stop Site C, going to ban all, stop old growth logging and ban raw log exports, use every tool in the toolkit to stop TMX. And of course, what have they done? Use the courts to do the opposite. First Nations have had, I think, 3 cases where they've won injunctions against extraction on their territories. But it's just a procedural now. And even we have to listen with the last court appearances to the judge discussing with the Crown prosecutor how they're going to process us like they did TMX. So it's government has handed off its responsibility to the police and the court, and the police just look at it, forget the Nuremberg trials, forget responsibility to civil society, forget the fact that the police are meant to be upholding our civil rights. And they're doing the opposite. It's like looking at Teal and the RCMP is like 2 thug gangs that have a mission in common. And that is what it is like. It is a war zone. So we do have a government that says, oh, we have nothing to do with the RCMP. Horgan, our premier, repeatedly states that. But our provincial government pays for this enforcement. And our Minister of Security, Mike Farnsworth, approved whatever the RCMP are doing. So they are able to act above the law without any identification and continue their thuggery, which hasn't gotten any better. So it really is a war zone. And to see young people who are so traumatized and Indigenous people who have been so targeted, and to just listen to their stories when they can talk. So many people cannot even talk anymore because they've been so traumatized. The violations going on are out of this world. And again, we're going into court today where tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of hard-earned fundraising dollars are going into from the fundraising for these lawyers and working on their cases for months. All the effort we put into this, and each team, not just each individual lawyer, but each team of lawyers gets a couple of hours to speak after Teal had the stage all day yesterday. This is incredible. I mean, there is no justice in our laws. It's incredible what's going on.
It's not laws because the S is for space, and it's only land, air, and water that the court of law is able to cover. So there's so much to all of this, and I believe that an offline conversation after today would be beneficial. So we'll reconnect. And I know that we're getting near the top of when you are needing to get into the courts. I want to give you an opportunity to share any other pieces that could be beneficial at this time.
I think they need to leave at 9, is it 9:15, Carol? You need to be
Yeah,
off?
9:50, we've got to get on it. Well,
Yeah.
9:10 would be probably better, just to be sure, because we've got to be logged on by 9:15.
9:10.
I
Can
mean,
I
we
ask a
need
question?
bodies up here. We need people who can
Yes.
be in the woods. People are burnt out. We need more people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was my question for the two of you, Carol and Kathy, is what's needed now? What do we need to sustain the people on the ground and the lawyers and the whole movement? What do we need? What do you see?
Well, first of all, we need money. We have we have immense legal bills because we have so many legal teams. Many of our lawyers are working pro bono or at significantly reduced rates, and many have given hours and hours of free time, and they're just so passionate and dedicated to this cause. So, but we still need to pay for them. We also need to pay for and support the arrestees, then make sure that any court fines are reimbursed to them. Also, people have had their cars towed and forced to pay the $2,500 in towing fees to Teal Jones, which is the most despicable thing I've heard of, or one of them. And also just to assure people that they can be reimbursed for possessions, and so that we can take care of our people and support our people. So money is probably number one. Number two then is that we need people on the ground. We have no intention of giving up. We've been pushed from most of our camps, but that simply means that we will simply change our strategy. So we won't be saying what that is, obviously, but we will be changing things up so that we can still continue our peaceful defense of the trees.
And to give an idea of stuff, we have police cutting ropes that cost, $300 to $500 a piece. They just plow down and destroy our tents, our beautiful kitchens, stocked full of food. You wouldn't believe, just a quick calculation, I can come up with easily $100,000 worth of our camping, hiking, foodstuffs, equipment. The disgusting way all this, I suppose, good stuff is just trashed. And then the police work with Teal to, after trashing it, state that, oh, we abandoned our camp and all this stuff is abandoned. And then the police create Photoshop opportunities for their latest smear campaigns, which the RCMP have been notably famous for concocting. There's plenty of history on that. But they continue to destroy these beautiful encampments we've created, had beautifully organized, kept very clean. They trash it and then they use it as photos to say that this is what we leave behind. They are destroying at least $100,000 worth of camping equipment and foodstuffs alone.
The part of me that is coming to understand natural law is just in my head thinking, have you made claims or put the ones that are doing it in their private capacity on notice? Because it's private individuals serving in public positions that are not able to escape the fact if their name is on the document, they're responsible, and therefore they can pay for the damages that they have been inflicting, which I know it sounds very righteous and noble, and it sounds awesome if justice was actually served in this country. So I feel the frustration, and I wanted to create this opportunity to simply let the rest of Canada and the world understand what's happening in BC, and the fact that this is a bigger problem than what is being talked about in the mainstream, that won't talk about it because there is a distraction campaign that I often call video game drama that is ultimately designed to keep us away from what actually matters most. Our forests are the lungs of our planet. And if we're not respecting the lungs of our planet, how do we expect to continue breathing when now only 2% is remaining? Well, there's the tipping point that it's 1 to 3% of the consciousness, but we've never had a situation where we've had less than 2% of the old growth forest remaining for us to understand what happens when those trees are not there to breathe and clear that air for us.
Yeah, and it's not only what happens here with the forest, but it's also what's happening with the Wet'suwet'en. It's what's happening with TMX. It's what's happening with any time citizens protest what corporations and governments are doing to their environment, to their livelihoods, to the very earth that supports and embraces us. So, you know, that's what all these forces are lined up against us. And it's something that we have to, you know, become very aware of now. And this is what has happened. You know, you speak of personal responsibility, and RCMP officers recognize that all too well. And so they've removed their names and their badge numbers from their uniforms. So we have counteracted with developing a rogues gallery. We have pictures of their faces. And, you know, we know most we can identify the ones who are doing the worst damage. So, and we can identify them with their images and videos. So we do have a way of tracing that personal responsibility. But you know, can you imagine the legacy that these people will leave for their children and their children? We're working to save the environment for them as well. And they are just totally ignoring that and saying, well, you know, this is my job. This is what I've been ordered to do. Well, that's not good enough anymore. The public interest has to come first. Indigenous rights and sovereignty have to be recognized in a real and meaningful way. There's so much work to be done here. I despair some days that we will ever get to the point where justice will be done in the name of public interest. But each of us, we have thousands of us on the ground now, each of us working every day to do what we can to make things better. And I think this will all result in something positive. It has to.
On the other hand, what we're looking at in Fairy Creek is a training ground for how to treat civil disobedience. And this is what's happening. First of all, it was police from across British Columbia getting trained at Fairy Creek. Now they're from across Canada. I mean, this is what our government is looking at using as a weapon against people like you and I, against people standing up for our children's futures. It is absolutely incredible what's going on. And as a population, if we do not take the control back, I'm sorry, but history does keep repeating itself. And we've got many lessons there, don't we?
Most certainly, yes. Rainbow Eyes, it's nice to have you on here. And I feel like it's a good time for you to introduce yourself, if you wouldn't mind.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm so late. I'm recovering from, no, I'm not recovering. I'm in the middle of a bad sinus cold. So I slept in a little bit.
Good for you.
But yeah, Gayla Kesla, Nugwa, Rainbow Eyes. I'm a member of the Danakdao Awitlala First Nation. And I've been at Fairy Creek for the last 3 months, living there, moved in, arrested 4 times. And I haven't been allowed back for the past, I think, 4 weeks now, because my release conditions were that I can't go south of Nanaimo. And I have a probation officer that I have to check in with every week. They've also confiscated my drum, which I make sure I bring to every front action. So like on the weekend, the elders for ancient rainforests come down from Victoria. We would have big actions every single weekend and gather the people, the forest defenders, and we would have beautiful movements, dance parties, ceremonies. and everybody brings their drum. It's become quite a big and important thing to have on the front lines. And it's something that we're learning from like the police liaisons that the RCMP don't like. They don't like the power of the drums. It's a sacred ceremonial item. And on my third arrest, my drum was confiscated and it's been charged with mischief. And it has its own court date in October, separate from me. So it's like charged and it's like, it's in jail. So like, that's a little bit of like, what's like the craziness, like on top of like the brutality and the traumatization of like the forest defenders. Like these are like the RCMP officers and the green men are just like so backwards in their thinking. And they just don't understand our unity and our like the family that's being created there, and our determination, you know, the fact that they would take a drum and charge it, you know, and the court system allows it, you know, like it stands by it. Like it's just so wild. Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just going to say we've got to let Carol and Kathy get on our way, and want to send you off in a very high vibing way and say our prayers are with you, our hearts are with you. We're grateful for all you're doing, and we will continue to help get the message out after today. So this is the first meeting where these ladies are present, and they've already been pre-sent here because this is the mission that we're here to fulfill. And it's great to see fellow warrior sisters in the frame, and I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, you
Thank
guys.
you so much. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Cheryl.
guys.
Thank you,
Yes,
Rachel.
it's good to see you, Angel Eyes. Lovely. Bye now.
We will stay on, and Royanne hasn't had an opportunity yet. I just wanted to give Carol and Kathy an opportunity to leave gracefully, and get on with what they're needing to do. So Rainbow Eyes, if you wanted to say anything else, I don't mean to keep calling you Rainbow Eyes, it's just that I can see and I didn't hear the pronunciation of your full name.
Yeah, Rainbow Eyes. That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was just saying that I'm from the Danakdao Awitlala First Nation. That's where.
Got it. Okay, that's amazing. There's so many words, and just it's foreign to my ears so far because I'm over in Ontario, and so I was trying to read some of the clan names, and I was just struggling in my ignorance. So I love I love that you're representing, and I appreciate the tribalism that is present in this initiative because it really matters. And our native people have been attacked by the corporations since the beginning because native is powerful. That's why they did it alternative. Like an alternative is an alternative, or it's like there's so many terms. It's like a friend of mine around here has actually shared about how the term Aboriginal is a one-sided agreement that transferred over what came. So Indian, for instance, falls under the term Aboriginal, but it doesn't actually carry with it all of the agreements that were made when that was in the Indian Act, for instance. It doesn't transfer over because it's a one-sided agreement. But when you don't know that, then you can't do anything with it. And there's so many things that all of us here have to share, and just we can go on a lot of different tangents, but keeping it specifically relevant to here. I'd love to know, Royanne or Rainbow Eyes or Cheryl, if you've got anything that you want to share in terms of what's happening, what's needed, how we can help, what we can do.
Well, my name is Royanne Petrell, and I'll give you a little bit of background, and then a little bit what I've been doing there, and then where you can help. And every time I do this, I get a bit emotional, especially after listening to this. You just, people call it Fairy Creek syndrome. First it evades you, your dreams, and then it evades your life. And because you just can't believe this is actually occurring. It's no one could believe it. And so because they can't believe it, they keep going back down there because they said, this can't be real. Anyway, retired professor from chemical and biological engineering, UBC. I've always been an avid birder. After the injunction was read, I went down there to find out what was going on. And I heard many birds. I reported the birds. And then to something called eBird. And eBird is an electronic database for citizen scientists. I received emails from 2 really highly respected birders asking me to go down to record the western screech owl that I had heard, because it's a highly threatened species. Now I have to tell you, prior to that time, yes, I knew about all these birds, but I didn't know how, which ones were threatened, or, you just kind of put them in there. And it just turns out that the government has never assessed and carried out a survey for endangered species in any of the areas around Fairy Creek. And it's up to a logging company whether they want to do that or not. It's not mandated. It's a loophole that is actually in the Federal Forestry Act, that there's surveys are not mandated. And every province has an option to do whatever they want. So anyway, I went down there and I started to get more involved in the endangered species that were down there, especially since I found out there had been no surveys done. And then other birders joined me. So I ended up with quite a gang of people. And Cheryl came along too. And I still don't think to this day she knows one bird from another, but she had an opportunity to go into the old growth forest and see it from a different perspective. There wasn't just trees, there was all kinds of other things in there. And she learned to hear them. She was filming them. She was so excited. She was just turned on and like, wow, it was a beautiful experience. And I would talk to you about the spiritual side right now. One of the other birds that we were asked to go, because even these professional birders were afraid to go because they would lose their funding or their positions in the government or their funding from the government. So another one asked us to go to find these endangered marble murrelets. I had seen them in the ocean, but it's difficult. You have to wake up at 3 a.m. And now remember, I'm looking for western screech owls at 12 at night. So I wake up at 3 a.m. These are short days. And then you have to wait until they come, and then you record them with specialized equipment if you have them. Their special calls. They sound like seabirds flying into the woods. So after we were very successful in doing this, I decided we should have a meditation, invite everybody we can to listen to these birds, starting from 3 o'clock in the morning until about an hour and a half or 2 hours later, when the whole show would be over. So we were up on a ridge, and this ridge actually overlooks Granite Creek, which Granite Creek feeds Renfrew Creek, and that's where the birds will fly up over a big ridge. And the whole thing has been clear cut.
That's Helicamp.
That's Helicamp. And behind us is the beautiful old growth cedar, yellow cedar cloud forest behind us. And that's where the birds are going to fly into. And so we're on the ridge. And the first thing you see is down far is the fog just starting to come up the valley. And as the fog comes up, you hear all the morning birds starting to sing. There'll be robins, varied thrushes, so many birds just singing. And then finally, when the fog has reached you and the birds have reached you, so have the marble murrelets. And you can hear them above your head. And I was quite worried. I had been a meditation instructor for a long time, and getting people to meditate 20 minutes, let alone 2 hours, was like, how was I going to do that? So I had a hard time meditating. I said, oh, I am really punishing these people, right? Afterwards, I asked them, how was it? And they said, is it over? I thought only 5 minutes have passed. And they didn't fall asleep. No? And even to this day, they're talking about this amazing experience, just sitting there on this ridge and all this nature surrounding you, just coming up and surrounding you, and you doing nothing, just being there. And I think that's why there's so many birders and photographers and everyone joining me, because they get this opportunity you have to be so quiet to listen, because you don't see the birds, you have to hear the birds, especially in the old growth forest where the trees are so high. So it's an amazing experience. And so many people in the camps have told me they have never seen an old growth forest. They're there because they're so worried about the next generation. They believe that the forests represent everything what's happening on this earth. The destruction of this forest is like everything else being destroyed. And when I tell them what's up there, they're so grateful that I'm there. And I'm so grateful that they're there, because if they're not there, I would never have had these experiences, because these forests would have been gone already. Anyway, I submit the data to the government, and I have since April. Federal government, provincial government. The provincial government, it's mostly under forestry. That's where wildlife is. I submitted to the federal species at risk biologists. I have submitted it to, and they told me to submit it to the Conservation Data Center. So I did, with the email address they gave. All I ever heard back was, except for the very first email, all I heard back was thank you. Now, nothing else. Thank you for submitting the data. Make sure you put it to the Conservation Data Center. Finally, in August, I received an email from the Conservation Data Center saying I had been submitting my data to the incorrect place, because they don't actually receive information, but I should submit it to BC Environment. So okay. And then the Conservation Data Center, it was particularly interested in the data that we have on the Western screech owl, because it's being assessed this year. So the Conservation Data Center is kind of an independent body. They join with international bodies to collect and assess data from species at risk. So I said, that's great. And they have particular criteriums in which they use to see whether there's a viable population or not. In 2017 was the last time they did the assessment, and they found 40 viable occurrences of the Western screech owl in BC. To date, it hasn't been verified. A very limited surveying that I have, because I've been sent back by the RCMP. I can't go everywhere. My birders are, we're highly restricted. We have found 7 occurrences in the Fairy Creek area. So I say, well, this is great. 7, and they only found 40 then. And then in 2017, they said most of those 40 occurrences no longer exist. They're extinct. The nests are gone. So this 7 and a few maybe in the north, that's all the occurrences there may be right now to date. So one would think the government would be very, very urgently would stop the logging and protect these Western screech owls. No. The Canadian Data Center, the Conservation Data Center said the forestry does not have to listen to what they have to say. The other thing that we found out that the BC government and Conservation Data Center put out separate maps of where they have found endangered species. Western screech owl being one, Marble murrelet another. We have the speckled bellied lichen that another person has found, all in Helicamp. And on those maps, there was not a single animal or plant located in the Fairy Creek area. because it's not mandated, like I said before, to carry out a survey. And the Conservation Data Center on their website said, well, if you don't see any species there, you probably should carry out an assessment. And that's all the power they have, a suggestion that you carry out an assessment. So not only do we have very few old growth forests, these animals and plants that depend on them, also a very small number. And now today, of this beautiful spot where we had the meditation, and we did find massive amount. Oh, they said the occurrences that we had in marble murrelets are outside global expectations. Their forest is being cut down today. I have not been able to convince the government, the media will not touch it really. They did talk a little bit about the Western Screech owls before, that was good. So what can people do? We must get a big media outlet to have an outcry about this, because I was told that more media attention is needed, and then the government will do something. But they won't do anything because no one believes this could possibly be the case. Everyone believes that, yes, Canada takes care of their threatened species. Wrong, they do not. We do as a public. And if we, and most of us like me, I'm an avid birder, didn't even know that this was going on. How is the general public going to know this or even believe this? So we must have a massive outcry to save them. And you can go to the Conservation Data Center website, and they list all of them. And that's what I'm asking people to do. If people care about wildlife, we have to do something, and we have to do it now, because this forest, this cloud forest, I think someone told me there's only 3 or 4 left in BC. And so, and they're very special. You know, we love the ones in Costa Rica, but I don't think how many people realize that we have our own cloud forest here in BC, and they're under massive threat. And why they're so wonderful is they always receive water in the form of fog. So the trees can grow tall, big, and beautiful. And the lichens can grow on them. And then when there's water, there's more wildlife. And so we must do something. It breaks my heart every time we go out there, even though I'm in the beautiful forest, my heart is just broken. Just broken.
You have worked so hard. This woman has worked so hard day and night, researching and sending information into the government and all the different bodies that need to know more. It's just amazing. And to hear her bird calls and how she is in the forest is so much fun. Yeah, she'll say, oh, did you hear that? Oh, that means this, and that means this. Oh, did you hear that? Oh, that means this. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I love it. And then there's the lichen. Tell the people a little bit more about the lichen, because that was new to me.
So we had gone to Helicamp that's being destroyed many times because it's an access point to other forests, old growth forests, and we have to get really strong because we're climbing up mountains, carrying equipment and everything else. And we had a little camp, and we called it bird camp. And so then another lady joined us, Tasha, and Tasha's an artist, and she does artistry with lichen, and she found there a really highly threatened lichen growing on the trees, and it was right in our camp. So I was like, oh, we know birds, but I think our knowledge of other organisms is pretty poor. Anyway, she's found probably, she said, I think, don't quote me, 75 trees loaded with them there, all of them scheduled for logging. And I think it's the highest concentration of them in BC, but the government said it was an insignificant find. So that was BC Forestry would say that. So anyway, they're amazingly there, and they do amazing ecosystem functions. They trap nitrogen from the air, and they fertilize down below. They trap carbon. They and they have all kinds of other microorganisms living inside this lichen. There's a whole story coming. I think it's out on the National Observer. It just came out, and it's about this lichen. Still, even though we went out in a national paper, they're still cutting down all those trees as we speak right now. And in those trees also live the marble murrelet, but not the screech owl. The screech owl lives a little bit further off into the woods. And so it's really quite, it's still amazing to me to believe that this is happening, especially since they never carried out a survey in the first place. And you know, I just can't see how they can get away with that, but they do.
Well, they do until we hold them personally liable and help remind them that every member of the general public is a private individual that is acting in a public position. And when they're signing their name, they are liable, and we need to hold people liable for participating in this. And the government is ultimately the top of the public sector, and the corporations are the private sector or the private domain of the public sector. And that's why private individuals step into the public domain in the private capacity, signing for the corporations that then loop us into the public domain and help us forget how powerful we are as a man or woman to be able to actually do what's required. So I appreciate that you were each able and willing to come onto this meeting at such last minute notice. I would love to make sure that if there are any final messages that anyone wants to put forward into this space about the Last Stand initiative, I would love for people to be able to know how to reach you. So I will post up the link that I have, and if anyone wants to speak more into it while that's showing, that would be great.
I also sent to Laura all the contacts that Roy Ann was speaking about, if that could go up underneath the post later for people to be able to make all those calls. And I'd really like to hear from you, Rainbow Eyes, about how you feel and how you sort of see this unfolding and what it's felt like for you, because you are a most amazing, beautiful young woman. And
you're so amazing, Cheryl. I love you so much. Yeah. Like meeting beautiful people like Sunshine has been such an honor. And just so grateful for everyone that we have been able to meet and get to know. It's like it's really life-changing, Fairy Creek, the experience there. To see that we can't trust RCMP, to really leave the box of like Western culture and society that we grew up in, and to really connect to the trees and each other on such a deep and spiritual level. Like Fairy Creek, it's like what's happening to the animals. I remember when Sunshine, you were there with Royanne and you discovered the screech owls, and like this excitement went through the camp. Like I remember it, like we felt the energy of it. Like, oh my God, this is exciting. This is, this can help us. But Royanne, to hear you say that, like, they're just like completely ignoring it is just, it's like not even surprising from what we've experienced. And like, the beautiful thing about being at Fairy Creek is understanding that we hold the power, but we have to make the change. And that's why we're working so hard every single day to make it happen, because we have to do it ourselves, because the government isn't going to do it. So we have to be loud. We have to make the connections. But like this, And we are in social media now every single day, and it's become such a big part of the movement, is connecting with people on the outside, is frontline work just as much as the people in camp are in the dragons, being arrested. Like, I can't be arrested anymore, so there's so much that we can do on the outside. We're learning, and we're just learning, like, the multi-layered level learning of this whole movement is just so spirit-led. Like, we follow Elder Bill Jones. We're there because we've been invited by the elders. We listen to the matriarchs. We're just learning this like deep level of respect for each other. And it's because the system is corrupt that we're getting so strong. And that's the beautiful thing. So like, we have hard days where it's like people, forest defenders, brothers and sisters, people that we know, break ribs, get maced in the mouth, get their hair pulled out, are brutalized, traumatized. Like, there are no words to describe like the tyranny of the system at Fairy Creek. It's just like, it's unexplainable unless you have been there to experience it. But people keep coming every single day. There's so much love and support online, and we're just so much stronger because we have come together, you know, in the face of it. And it's yeah, it's unifying, if anything. Like, you know, it's making us stronger that we can come together and share the stories of hurt. And like, I was just meeting with a forest defender last night with her beautiful family, and just like getting together with Fairy Creekers on the outside is so uplifting and beautiful. Talking on the phone, like when I, you know, talk to Sunshine on the phone, yeah, like we literally can't be brought down by like the injustice of like the corrupt system. So I don't know, it's such a beautiful, it's we are living history right now. Like, it's so historical. Every single person knows it. Like, the pictures that are coming out of Fairy Creek are like legendary. Like, it's such an important time and we all know it. It's just, yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely. I mean, it's horrific and horrible, but it's balanced as it should be by like the beauty of the movement, you know? And that's I don't know, that's the focus. That's the focus, is the beauty of it.
It's the beauty of it, and it's the heart of it, and the soul of it, and
Yeah.
it's bringing the light together of all of us who are each respectively holding the light where we are, and we need more people to be able to hold the balance where the attack is strongest. So I really appreciate you for making time to be able to come today and share your message, and very much look forward to being able to come together again after today's court case is wrapped up and we see what the score is. And then definitely it's time for men and women to stand up as private individuals within a public system or outside of it, however we want to look at it. We're all part of the same team, because if the trees go down, so do we. So it's time for us to unite, and we're doing that. And I'm so grateful to be with other powerful women to do this, because the Hopi tradition did say that if this is gonna get turned around, it's gonna be by the Western woman. And it's not just by one, it's by all of us together getting over our own toxic matriarchal patterns to be able to create more solid ones, because there is an element to that, I think. And there's a tractor going by. I live out in the country, so I apologize. But just there is an element to women. Historically, it's been very difficult for us to get beyond ourselves to work together. until it really matters, and it really matters. And so I just bring that up because the toxic mother or the toxic maternal energy is the dysfunctional aspect, and the functional aspect is what we're really feeling here, because this is a heart-centered approach to sacred activism. And that's really where we really need to get back to understanding why we're doing what we're doing. Because when we know that, then we can figure out the how and the what that comes before that. But until we have our how in our hearts, or until we have the why in our hearts, the how is going to keep us in the boxes of all the BS that keeps us out of our present moment where all of our power lies. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please do share this message with somebody that needs to hear about the last stand. We all know this is the last stand for us all, and the trees are a great way to literally have something physical to stand with, behind, in front of, for. And if you need something outside of yourself, let it be these trees, because they've been here for us all, our forefathers and mothers and everybody else before that too. So thank you for being willing to step up, and look forward to giving that update soon.
Thank you, Laura. You rock.
Peace.
Soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gayla
Bye,
Kessler.
Royan. Bye, Rainbow Eyes.
Bye, Sunshine. Love you.
I'm just stopping the it's not streaming anymore. It's we can stop the recording, or we can just, I can cut this piece out. But ladies, thank you. Genuinely, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to connect with you. I would love to know how to support more from here. So please do keep me posted.
We're not small communities anymore.
No, we're not. Like traditionally we would have, like, all disputes were in the potlatch. So if any disagreement happened in the community, it would happen in a potlatch with witnesses, with the community. And now everything is behind closed doors. Nobody knows what the chief and council are doing. And they can put out tiny little like voting scenarios and like kind of like rig it. Yeah, Facebook votes. That's what's happening in the Pachidat. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I feel like we're relearning how to do this way, because there's whispers of it everywhere. Everybody knows how it used to be, but it's not like that anymore. So but there's just been so much like genocide of culture that and that's why our voice is quiet. I've heard this, Bill Jones say this, because we're healing. Our people are healing. We're not like we're not out in numbers at Fairy Creek, because we're at home healing. And it's so crazy that it's the ones that are not happy and like really hurt that have the loud voices, and these are the voices that we're hearing. So yeah.
Wow. Thank you
That's
for
very
that.
powerful.
That helped me a lot. I would love for our next gathering to talk more about that, because people don't know. I don't know, and there's just, we need more space to be able to talk about these kinds of things, because usually it's like, okay, you have 2 minutes. Well, there's no growth in 2 minutes. It's like everything else. Hurry, hurry, sweep it under the carpet. Let's move on to the next thing. And this is so important. And what you said, Laura, is so important. I'd love to be able to have that discussion, because, the more we know, the more power we have, the more, the wider our scope is as to, how we move and dance with everyone else. And we have to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we can schedule another call, and I'm aware that we kind of said it was going to be an hour, and so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I do really appreciate it. This conversation is very, very important. And I don't really have any faith in lawyers anymore, to be honest. I don't believe that lawyers are going to get us out of this, because they can only represent the legal fiction that's traded on the stock market. That's why you're represented. When you show up in court, you are yourself. You present yourself. They represent you as something other than you are. So they're not going to get us out of this, because lawyers are sworn first and foremost to the crown, which means they're already sold out. They can't make a decision if they're going to actually maintain their standing in the bar. They can't vote for the people. So it's we, the people, that actually have to stand as a man or woman to actually do what's required.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Shake it up, women.
Yeah. So I look forward to hearing how it goes today in court, if you could keep me posted. And if there's any resources that you guys could send as well. Obviously, this came into my awareness yesterday, and now we posted the call and made some connections, and we've got the recording now. And then we can schedule another call as soon as we've got more information. And I do really feel like what you had said, Rainbow Eyes, about the healing of the trauma. And it really is the healing ones are the ones that are more peaceful or graceful, that are able to hold that balance more, that are looking after themselves. So it is the aggressive ones. And I love that you've brought that up, and I would like to bring that into a larger leadership frame context, where you can come in with other leaders and we can bring in this issue into the other issues, and we can understand how this is so directly connected to COVID that it's insane that we aren't making the connections until we do. And then it's like, oh, well, obviously, if we're distracted about this fake virus that doesn't never been isolated, at least, then how can we focus on what actually is going to impact us long term? So thank you for everything. And Royanne, I love your passion with birding, and I definitely can see a lot of birding people coming and hearing what you're saying, and then hopefully getting some more support that way. So yeah, that's a huge community. I'll see if we can maybe get some support to help you with, and we'll have another conversation soon.
And I think Royanne too is planning another birding outing.
Oh.
And so if when I get that information from her, I can share it to you, and birders from around the world can come and join her. I think she's going to get arrested. We have to decide what outfit she's going to wear, though.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, let us pray not, and let us make sure that you have claimed your rights ahead of time, so that when they come and then they try, we say, know your rights. I know mine. I've claimed them. And
yeah, we have to do that. Hey, you guys, we have to find that out so we can pass it forward. Thank you.
Well, it's not even like, it is about finding it out, but it's literally just about doing it. And you send it by registered post, and we can I'll show you after the 24th, I'll have a lot more confidence in what I'm recommending, because I've sent 10 lawful notices this way that they haven't responded to, which means they're acting in bad faith. And I'm going to call them out on it on the 24th, when I'm going to be, apparently I've got to figure out how to do this, and I'm getting coached on it, but I'm going to be putting the prosecutor on the stand to answer the questions that they haven't answered on my lawful notices. And then we'll see the power of lawful notice. So I'll have more information to be able to help you by then. But in the meantime, I'm just aware of how powerful it's been, because I didn't show up to court twice. And all they did was send a police officer to offer me a third agreement that was a contract, or the summons with then the box check that I had to come next time. So like, isn't that kind of strange that I didn't show up and they didn't arrest me? Why? Because don't they always have to, except for if I've claimed my rights to not consent and not appear, and then they can't, which is kind of where I'm at, thinking may actually be where we're at, which means like I'm more protected than I've ever been in my life. And I only got this way because I got the summons, but I also lost my freedom in the Mental Health Act to understand like this is about way more than any of us are fully conscious of. But I'll keep you posted on that. You keep me posted on yours, and thank you very much.
Universe works in beautiful ways. Thank you all. Namaste.
Namaste.
Awesome. Thank you. Gela Kessela.
Gela Kasla.
Kessica? Gayla Kessica?
Gayla Kesla.
Gayla Kesla.
Yeah.
Gayla.
Yeah, it's a thank you, and it's like a greeting and it's like a, and we have no word for goodbye, so it's kind of like what we say at the end of a meeting or like a greeting.
Wow.
Can
Gayla
you spell
Kesla.
it, Rainbow Eyes? Can you spell Gela Kasla?
GALA, or maybe it's GILAKA
SLA.
S
SLA.
LA. It's really similar to how it sounds. It's Kwakwala.
We have a campground here in Courtney that's called the Gela Kasla campground. Beautiful.
Really?
There's bears in it and everything.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Scientists came in and they did a 5-foot down box all the way into the ground, and they found all kinds of old artifacts in this campground right by the river.
I've heard about that. Yeah, with the Comox Guardians.
Yes.
Like how much that they found like all over Comox, and it's so developed there. So they have so many archaeology sites that are just like, built upon like apartment buildings, campgrounds, because that's their traditional territory.
Yeah, I think one of the oldest artifacts found in Canada was in Comox, and a kid found it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, we're heading to the courthouse too now.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right, shake it up, girl.
And
Yeah.
you've got my contact as well, Rainbow Eyes. But if you keep in touch as well, would love to. So
Definitely.
yeah, please do,
Yeah.
and would love to be able to support, because it's not okay when good people are getting screwed by a corrupt system. It's just not okay. And so I'm glad that you're standing, and appreciate the connection, and look forward to reconnecting again soon.
Bye.
Toodles. Thanks, guys. I'll just
Awesome.
end the meeting now.
So thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.